We are in conversation with Ms. Nida Usman Chaudhry, the founder of the Women in Law Initiative, Pakistan. Before we begin, I would like to give a short introduction of Ms. Nida Usman Chaudhry. She holds an LLB honors and an LLM in Law and Development from the University of London. She's a diversity and inclusion advocate and the founder of the Lahore Education and Research Network, as well as the Women in Law Initiative, Pakistan. Her focus has been on bridging the gap between legal education and practice through capacity building, and to work for equality of access and advancement of female lawyers in the profession. She combines her professional interest in law and human rights with activism on environmental and development issues. She was the founding member and chairperson of the Gender Equality and Diversity Committee of the Lahore High Court Bar Association from 2018 to 2020. Currently, she is leading Women in Law's collaborative project with the Ministry of Law and Justice and Group Development Pakistan on increasing women's representation in law, supported by the Australian High Commission and the British High Commission. She was among the list of 100 women from Global South featured in Feminist 100 by the Gender Security Project in 2021, and has won the International Justicia Awards 2021 in the Academia International category in Vienna. Previously, she was also won SUE-GAP Emerging Women Leader Award in 2018. We've decided to interview Ms. Nida today to learn more about her recent achievement at the Justicia Awards 2021 and her journey of the inspiring initiatives and projects that she leads. So let us welcome on board Ms. Nida Usman Chaudhry, our very special guest and one of the women leading in law in Pakistan. Hello, Ms. Nida, how are you doing?
Hi, Sara, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me in for that wonderful introduction.
It's so nice to have you on board. We are so excited to talk about the multiple things and the multiple projects that the Women in Law Initiative is undertaking these days, and to learn more about your recent achievement. So first, I would like to congratulate you on winning the Academia International Award at the Justicia Awards 2021. And I would like to ask you about the awards themselves. So can you please tell us more about the Justicia Awards, which celebrate women in law and the legal profession from all over the globe, for people who don't know much about the awards?
Yes, of course, I'd love to. The Justicia Awards are held every year in September by the Women in Law Initiative in Vienna. It's a separate initiative, so it's not we're not associated with them. But now that we have, I was nominated and eventually won the award, so there is a liaison and association now. But I just want to put it on record that the Women Law Initiative that we have in Pakistan is not part or parcel of the Women Law Initiative in Vienna. In any case, our initiative, as you know, was established in 2016, whereas the one in Vienna was established in 2018. And since then, the awards were part and parcel of their general ethos to honor female laureates from all the legal professions in one of the three categories that they honor female lawyers in. And those three categories basically include international leaders in the lifetime achievement category, which is for most senior female professionals. Then they have the category of academia, and there's one other category for young achievers, game changers, and pioneers. Nominations are open every year from October to somewhere around March and April, and you can self-nominate yourself, and there are other people, they can also fill in nominations on your behalf. And this year, I've been told that they received over 80 nominations from 17 different countries, and wow. I was one of them. So that's about.
Congratulations, that's very inspiring and sounds very interesting. And it's such an honor to have someone from Pakistan actually win the award, and also to be nominated by people from all over the globe. Which of these categories, ever since more and more lawyers have started researching on different topics, but which category do you think, actually, apart from the Academia International category, was very important to recognize women lawyers and leaders in?
Sara, I was actually nominated in two categories. which was one was academia, and the other was the one that I mentioned, the third category, which was about game changers and pioneers and people who've young achievers and all that. So they decided to give me the award for the category, for the academia category, because its description included somebody who would have influenced or who could show demonstrable changes in attitude, beliefs, and practices towards gender equality in the legal profession. So my work was able to meet that criteria, and therefore I was classified as winner in the academia category. But I'm very excited to share that the kind of innovative categories that they have at the Women Law Initiative Vienna, which includes the game changers, they give opportunities to younger people to shine as well. So it's not just the senior people getting nominated for the Lifetime Achievement Awards. It's also, the focus is more on the younger lot who are doing innovative work, particularly creating opportunities for other female lawyers. And that is what comes under the game changer category. And I think that that's very innovative in itself, because it kind of recognizes the younger blood and the more innovative and creative female lawyers from all over the world. So that's very exciting to see that it's not just for senior people, but also younger people from all over the world being recognized for their contributions.
Definitely. And I believe this is such an inclusive approach to actually encourage the younger of women lawyers to on their own, so that they can also be recognized for their efforts. Because this is something that a lot of countries are now doing, that they actually want to promote the participation of the younger generation of female lawyers and law students, so that they can actually contribute to the legal profession and make it a better and safer place for more women and younger generation to join. So that's a very interesting category, I must say. And I was following your journey throughout, from the moment you got nominated, from the time that you actually won the award. But I want to know your feel and your emotions as well. How excited were you to actually represent Pakistan on such a large international platform, and then also bring the award home? So what were you feeling when you found out that you were won?
When I discovered that I was amongst the few candidates that were shortlisted for the awards, along the likes of Justice Sonia Sotomayor of the US Supreme Court and Zuzana Kapitova, who's the current serving president of the Slovak Republic, and other outstanding colleagues from Europe and essentially the West, leaving me as the only candidate from my ethnicity and region. So that really was an incredible moment of joy, not just for my individual sake, but for the fact that, it was an opportunity to showcase on a global scale the work that we had collectively been doing in Pakistan. And then winning it, of course, had given us further credibility and impetus and the due recognition to take it forward, and for which I'm ever so grateful to Asha Singhania from South Africa. She's the one who nominated me and thought of our work and efforts here in Pakistan as being worthy of such recognition. So obviously, it's an incredible feeling.
I can imagine what a beautiful honor it was, and it still is. And to win it for the for your country, that definitely, I agree with you, brings more credibility to what we are doing here, and gives you that chance to also showcase your work to so many other people in different legal professions around the world who are not aware of what Pakistan is doing at this stage. And this just brings our work under that positive limelight and spotlight, gives it the due recognition that it deserves. So moving on, I would really like to know more about the motivation and inspiration you had behind setting up the Women in Law Initiative in Pakistan. So you launched the initiative in 2016, as you mentioned. And apart from your motivation and inspiration, I would also like to know, how far do you think the legal profession has come since the launch of this initiative?
Okay. Well, the basic question that led us to the Women Law Initiative was simply, where are the women? And, thus began our inquiry into this enigma. And we realized that, it wasn't just our issue, but that many other female students and colleagues shared the same concern. And, so a collective platform emerged in the name of Women in Law Initiative. And I personally think that we've been able to achieve a lot in this time, especially, when I think of it in terms of mainstreaming the conversation about representation of women, or when I look at how we've been able to create networking opportunities through use of new digital tools and technology, or bring in more awareness, education, support, that it's all accessible now and available to women and other vulnerable groups. And that has led to greater collaborations, synergies, and bonds, enabling more women to come forward with their own initiatives. So it's not just what we've done at Women in Law, but also how, a momentum of sorts has been set, and other people are also now coming up with their own initiatives and reclaiming the space. Or you see many more women pursuing litigation more actively in courts, and not just in the fields that were traditionally sort of appropriate for women, just family law वगैरह हो गया, but in diverse and technical areas like cyber laws and data protection and criminal justice, and transactional work, or energy and water, securities, equities. I mean, you name it. Even space law. I mean, I know women who are working in space law in Pakistan and elsewhere. So these are, of course, all the strides at the individual, or at best at the collective level. But, and all of this is still very personal to the women and the women-led groups in question. Ye sab unke efforts hai. But in terms of response from the authorities, and in terms of reforms at the institutional and structural level, I feel that there is still a long way to go, and our struggle continues. And for this, I think the legal profession needs a lot of introspection, because really, like, what have they done to be more inclusive and enabling in their rank in all these years? So that's my question to those in power. Yeah,
definitely, I agree. So basically, when you look at the legal profession, right, and you have spoken and very actively advocated on how there needs to be an increased representation of women in law. But what do you think is the biggest challenge in that representation? So in terms of representation of women in the legal profession, what do you think is the biggest challenge that women are facing?
Okay, so Sara, we've been working on this issue since 2016, and through our work, advocacy, engagement efforts, feedback from colleagues, as well as our own research and, observations in these years, we've been able to identify several structural and invisible barriers that hinder women's advancement in law. And I'll share a few of those with you. I mean, we know that women's entry into the profession was much later as compared to men. And so women basically inherited a legal profession and system that they had they had little or no say in developing. And that's mostly the case with every other thing in our socio-political context, that we find ourselves in. So essentially, therefore, what we need is, and where we currently lack, is in terms of affirmative actions for representation, which are missing from the law and policy, particularly when you want to address the structural challenges that women face. And when it comes to, for example, the leadership positions and decision-making roles in the profession, from lack of networking opportunities and other supportive facilities for an enabling environment, such as flexible working hours or daycare and maternity benefits and leave, to questions of, seniority, and the question of eligibility to run for bar elections, or the indirect elections to the Pakistan Bar Council, the composition of the JCP, or its eventual role in nominating and appointing judges in the higher courts, the erasure of women from being recognized as counsels in given cases, and failure to have their names marked in attendance when they appear in cases. All of this has resulted in pushing them back, or the prospects of them advancing in the profession, because they don't end up meeting the eligibility requirements when it comes to when the time comes for such appointments. Yeah. Or when, for example, they want to apply for their license as an advocate of the Supreme Court. If they don't have the requisite number of cases as counsels to their credit, they won't be able to meet that criteria. And that kind of awareness comes much later. You've already lost out on so much time. And so these are, matters of, awareness as well. But these become major obstacles in terms of representation of women in leadership roles in the legal profession. And that's what we want to educate on. And that's what we want to train women to address, so that they don't have to face those barriers.
And also, I feel like a lot of these challenges that you pointed out and a lot of problems and issues that you highlighted are have a lot to do with the how they how the bar is structured, right? So how basically women are represented in litigation matters, or how women are basically not even encouraged to participate in litigation, or the way the atmosphere of the court is built. I think a lot of this has to do with, like you mentioned, daycares, you mentioned maternity benefits or flexible working hours, and that's why a lot of women tend to either leave their jobs or move ahead and I think opt for more flexible jobs within the legal profession. It can be academia, it can
Well,
be a corporate job with more flexible hours, so on and so forth.
exactly. I'll give you another example. So we were supposed to have the bar elections in 2020, so last year. And in 2018, there was an amendment to the Legal Practitioner Bar Council Act, which kind of raised the eligibility by 5 years. So women who already joined the profession late, now, previously only 10-year experience was required to run as a candidate, but now that was increased by another 5 years. So now they needed to show 15 years of experience, right? So that obviously had a disproportionate impact on the eligibility of female candidates, but that wasn't taken into consideration in 2018 when the law was amended. And then that had an impact on the 2020 elections, because many women who would have qualified were then not eligible any longer. And this is what happens when female voices are missing from the corridors of power where decisions are being made. And that's why representation is so important.
Which is why also I completely agree, which is why also like changing that law or amending the law to actually increase the eligibility criteria by 5 years also means that women who were not eligible to stand for elections, but then also missing out the opportunity for other women to vote for them, right? So that's, we not only basically missed out on having women lawyers as leaders, but we also missed out on having more women participate in the election process, participate in the voting process. Because when you see that there are women lawyers missing as leaders in leadership positions, there is automatically a trickle down effect, and it affects the women who could have voted for those women lawyers as leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And which is also something very disappointing to see the way our elections are currently being held in Pakistan. Not just like in terms of eligibility criteria, but also when a lot of lawyers try to take up that space where women are having conversations, or women are trying to reclaim the space, and we see that women are not giving that due representation where they actually deserve to get that leadership position that they have been working so hard for. So I do want to ask one other question regarding representation in law, and I want to know that what is that one thing that you believe you've been trying to change for a very long time in the legal profession, but you still think we have a very long way to go?
Well, that'll have to be the institutional reforms for a more inclusive, equal, diverse, and enabling legal profession, because all those structural reforms require a lot of resources and a change in the mindset. So, and of course, more female voices and more voices of the allies as well. So you need that political will kind of a scenario to be there in order for those structural and invisible barriers to be removed. And I think that's where we are still struggling and still have a long way to go.
Definitely, I agree. So now moving on to the next question, which basically I want to get an idea of how you view the legal profession as it stands in line. How would you do that? And that does not have to do with representation alone, but just generally how you view it in terms of the women in the legal profession and how you want to explain it.
Well, I feel that legal profession in Pakistan is in desperate need of a makeover from being viewed as a profession of lords to simply a profession with space for all.
Yes, that actually is a very, very interesting way to put it. And I think this is like something that is inspiring, because a lot of people don't view it as a profession, and they view it as something very exclusive, not for everyone. But
Yeah.
thank you for putting it like that. So I do want to talk about one more thing, which is that when you launch a project under the Women in Law Initiative, one thing that you want is your goal to become, or your goal to achieve that goal of advancing women's representation in law. But how do you think that goal can be further achieved? When you talked about allies, right, I want to highlight, how do you think that goal can be further achieved if we include more allies in promoting the sense of male allies, helping women out with the projects and initiative of the Women in Law Initiative, or other things and other work that we are doing?
Okay, so of course, Women Law Initiative has a gender-specific lens, and it is about, the marginalized class and impact of female lawyers, and it's mainly been about, giving them visibility or creating opportunities for them. But the conversation that we've had has mostly been very, very inclusive. So we've had male allies been speakers on our panels. We've had consultations with them. We've from day one, we've tried to include that perspective, because we feel that this is not a conversation that can be had amongst just one class of persons that's being affected. This is an issue that the legal profession has to address holistically, and therefore all stakeholders are not just welcome but encouraged to be part of the solutions, part of the dialogue, part of the debate and discussions. And I'll give you another example. Like just recently, there was a lot of issue about the appointments in the superior judiciary, and we saw how the bar councils kind of arranged a whole conference, and we didn't see as much inclusion of women, even though it was supposed to be an issue that was directly impacting women, not just women lawyers but also women in general. But there was a lack of representation as far as their amalgamation was concerned. But as women in law, we were adamant and we were persistent, and we kind of made our space by continuing to send out letters to the Attorney General, continuing to share our statements and our perspectives publicly as well, so that we could be part of the discourse. And the same way, we would like the allies to also consider including more voices. So if we are willing to do that, and we are open to that from a very early stage in our initiative, we just expect the same from all other stakeholders in the profession, because inclusion has to be both ways. It can't just be about us being included and them being excluded. It has to come from from all the stakeholders, essentially, because ultimately we're part of the same legal profession, and it's about making that profession more inclusive. So it needs all the voices that it can to take this this to basically take the reform forward and make it a reality for all of us.
Definitely, and I believe that inclusion can't be selective. So women cannot be and should not be included in just a few selective programs or initiatives, but in all places where decisions are being made. And I believe that, so I do have a follow-up question with regards to the letters and the proposals, or any announcement that you address to these bar councils. Were these met with some positive responses? What did you see a change over these 4 or 5 years, and were women actually included within these programs and within these conferences that the bar organizes?
Can you hear me, Sara?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, so this example that I was giving about engagement with the members of the Judicial Commission as well as the bar councils, this is a fairly recent, exchange that we've had. It wasn't received, like we didn't receive any direct responses or replies to our queries yet. But we do know that our work has been taken forward and has been discussed in the corridors of power. So, and I think that itself is a very big achievement, because at least our perspective was discussed, considered, debated, and then, even if it wasn't followed, that's something different. But the fact that we were able to reach to that point where it was considered, I think to begin with, that's a success. But we intend to continue to push for engagement and for a seat at the table, because, again, the token representation itself is not enough. It needs to be backed by effective voice. And until, the people that we want representation for actually also have a voice, no real meaningful change can ensue. So we will be pushing it for ourselves as well as for the others, and we will not sit down until we actually, get to contribute to the change that we wish to see.
Makes sense. So I do want to ask how you think the reforms can actually take place if it's going to take longer than anticipated for women lawyers to come in those leadership positions, because we all know how male dominated the legal profession is in Pakistan. And for reforms reforms to come, it doesn't happen overnight. And we've been working on this for quite a few years, and we've seen the inspiration work that you and your initiative are doing. But how do you think we can achieve short-term solutions to this actual problem of because I understand that what we are doing right now is definitely going to help us and prove to be very successful in the long run. But I do want to see what short-term solutions you think we can work towards to achieve a more gender-inclusive legal profession.
Well, in the shorter lens, obviously one has to work with what one has, and whatever the existing sort of circumstances are, you have to make the best of those. And in that, I would obviously focus more on educating and training female lawyers to reclaim their space, and to not give that space to begin with, because as you also mentioned, that initially there's a lot of discouragement, and there's a lot of there's a whole culture of not sort of taking female lawyers to the courts. So they do all the casework in the law firms behind the scenes, and then none of that gets recognized when the actual case is being argued. So I think that we can start with encouraging them much earlier on the importance of having a license, or importance of going and arguing their cases, or having their attendance marked and stuff. So I think that these gaps can be filled with some sort of training at the initial stage. And then at the same time, advocacy for institutional reforms should continue, and that might take time. But I think that more voices, more dialogue, more engagement on that front needs to continue to happen. Because what happens here is that, an issue comes up, it becomes a rage, then there's a lot of, exchange over it, and then, it goes out and people forget about it. So I think what's important is to keep writing about it, to keep talking about it, and to keep, raising the voice wherever you can, at whichever forum that you can, so that the conversation doesn't die and we can, push for change and reforms.
Definitely. So I do want to talk a bit about the positive things that you've seen in the legal profession very recently. So could you give me a few examples of where you have seen women making it to the top positions in the bar councils, in making it to the leadership positions, or women actually doing really well and setting partners of law firms, or just generally where you have seen that the women who are reclaiming their space are actually getting their due recognition and appreciation?
I'm actually glad that you asked this question, because there's something that I've been really wanting to put out, and I am genuinely and very much inspired to see how our KP chapter has progressed, and it's being led by Advocate Mehwish Kaka Khel. And through her, I've met some incredible women in the KP Bar Council who not only stood for the elections but also won the seats. And there are 2 or 3 of them who have really reclaimed their space against all odds. And with KP, I mean, I don't know, there is that perception that it might not be, or it may be somewhat more conservative than the rest of the country. But really, honestly, the kind of environment that the courts there, as per them, like the experiences that they've shared with us, the respect that they're able to ensure there for female lawyers when they're arguing cases in the court, or even during the time when they stood for the bar elections this year, how they were supported, how they actually then won, and how the unity within the female legal community within KP and Peshawar has enabled them to come forward in these leadership positions. That's remarkable, because I don't see the same unity in Punjab, where I feel that even female lawyers are divided amongst themselves. But to see the kind of bonding that women from Peshawar have, and how they're able to use that to their advantage, and even sort of even if they're standing against each other as opponents, the kind of professional conduct that they exhibited during the entire process of the elections, it really shows a lot of maturity. So I'm really inspired by them, number one. Then of course, we have examples of many female lawyers progressing and achieving milestones in very in phenomenal areas. Like Sara Bilal with Justice Project Pakistan has done wonders. We have Asma Hamid, who's established her own firm. Huma Jamil Babar in Islamabad, who's doing wonderful work in the criminal law aspect. Like she has her own chamber full of other female lawyers, and they're working on criminal laws. So it's remarkable. Then of course Nigat, Jannat, and cyber laws के their work is amazing. DRF is doing amazing work in that aspect. And behind that, I know so much work that women are doing. Malia Lari in Karachi, her work's phenomenal for the Legal Aid Society. Even in remote areas like Balochistan, and वहाँ पे जो ombudsperson है Miss Sabira Islam वगैरह, remarkable women, and all of them, not एक बेगम खुशनूद साहिबा हैं जो बहुत important काम कर रही हैं अपने areas में. These are far flung areas, not even like main cities जिसकी मैं बात कर रही हूँ. So we have shining female lawyers as examples, as role models. It's just the lack of visibility, unfortunately, which we are hoping that will change in a few years. But honestly, there is no lack of talent, there is no lack of remarkable women. And even in the corridors of power, आप देख लें, हमारी politics के अंदर भी आप देख लें, the kind of women we have in the politics, and how against all odds they're still trying to push for reforms, not just in the current government or in the current setup, but even historically. I'm speaking the kind of laws that we have. It's mostly thanks to female lawyers, and Shela Zia is a great example of that. So historically also, I think we've had such remarkable women who have changed the entire landscape of how litigation is done here, what it means to do strategic litigation, how articles, fundamental articles or rights, fundamental rights, and how they can be expanded to apply to, say, other kind of cases and scenarios that are not directly covered. It's amazing. I mean, we have a whole history and legacy of such important positive contribution by female lawyers. There was there's so many. There's Rabia Kari. She has served as the president of the bar as well for like I think 2 times. So it's amazing. These are all historic examples. Asma Jahangir Saiba, I mean, who wouldn't consider her a role model or a positive, beacon of hope to look up to? So there are many, and all over Pakistan, not just, in Islamabad or Lahore or Karachi, all over Pakistan, we have remarkable women in the profession.
So thank you so much for pointing this out, because we know the big names, and we know the women whose work we've read up on, or the whose work we're following. But there's so many other women, like you said, who are doing amazing work in somewhere in like suburbs or somewhere in like, much smaller cities. And it's just the lack of visibility, which is a huge challenge, of course, and just the lack of representation, that a lot of women who are doing so well in the legal profession either can't make it to leadership positions or are just not given the due recognition that they deserve. So I'm very
Well,
glad
I'm
to
hoping
actually find
that
out.
Pakistan's first Women in Law Awards will change that, and hoping that we'll get
Definitely,
a
definitely.
green signal to conduct them real soon. And that is actually the platform that was created specially so that such stories and such role models and such inspiring women can actually be brought out and their stories can be shared. So I'm really hopeful that in a month or so, we will be able to showcase many more female role models working all across Pakistan through the first Women in Law National Awards that we will be hosting soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah, that's the hope. And I'm very excited that you brought this up. So, for those who don't know, why don't you give a brief introduction or a description of what the first ever Women in Law Awards are and how we are recognizing the women from all over Pakistan and what these awards aim to achieve?
Well, it's part of the project that we're doing with the Ministry of Law and Justice, and it is their patronage and support through which we've been enabled, and it's been possible for us to work on a holistic project on increasing women's representation in law. And one of the aspects of that project are these national awards honoring female lawyers, and not just female lawyers, but also entities that have more that have shown very progressive policies of inclusion and equitable rights and rights to access these entities, and have exhibited a more inclusive environment within their ranks. So we're hoping that through that platform we will be able to bring visibility to the work that is being done. We have 22 categories to honor lawyers and entities in, and it's been a remarkable year and a process in which the nominations were received, and they will be gauged by an independent jury that we'll be announcing soon, hopefully. And we've received over 100 nominations, and to shortlist the candidates and then the winners, I'm sure must have been a Herculean task for our jury members. But we are very excited and looking forward to share that with everybody soon, so that everybody can know of all the amazing women that we have in Pakistan.
And I would really like to add here that I am very, very honored to be part of this initiative and this project, because it has actually shown me the amazing contributions that women in law have made to the legal profession in Pakistan. And I'm so excited to see the awards actually take place very soon, inshallah. So
absolutely, Sara, wouldn't have been possible without you and without so many other colleagues that hopefully I will be at liberty to share their names very soon. But I can right now just say that I'm really honored and grateful for all the support that we've had from everybody who's been on board this project.
Definitely, definitely. So I would really like to talk about one more thing before we move towards the end of the interview. And you talked about women lawyers in leadership positions, right? But I want to gauge how important do you think is mentorship? So when somebody comes in leadership position, right? How exactly do you think they should build that mentee-mentor relationship with the younger female lawyers who have no clue either about the legal profession or about the different careers that they can opt in the legal profession, and just about the advancement that they can expect over the years with regards to their career and the field that they are opting for. So I want to talk about that. If you could give your views about this thing.
This entire profession is built on an apprenticeship model where you shadow your seniors and then you learn on the job. That's the structure. And I feel that structure itself kind of automatically brings in the importance of having the right mentors to guide you, because they can make or break your career. And that's, that kind of relationship is so important, because what you learn at law school and then what you have to apply, and that, practical knowledge and experience on the field, they can be very different from each other. And for that purpose, it's very important to have very strong bonds. And that's another reason why I think women were traditionally not able to really come forward or break those barriers, because networking and these kind of bonds in our society are not as easily made between a male senior and a female junior, so to say. So I think that if more female in leadership positions, with more female in leadership positions, we will see that kind of translate onto good mentor-mentee programs, which may develop organically or which may be consciously worked on and developed. Either way,
Definitely.
I think when you see somebody like yourself in a senior position, that culture will also come with it. So, I'm really looking forward to that time, because now we do have a lot of women in those senior positions in law firms, or having, all sort of.
Hello? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I think I lost the last line you just said. I think I lost you at the last line.
That culture will, with the women, with more women in leadership positions, that culture will also automatically kick in, because when you see, somebody like you in a position of leadership, so either that will automatically ensue in days to come, because with more women in that position, that relationship either would organically happen, or even if it is something that has to consciously be put in place initially, I think that culture can only flourish when you do have such mentors, or women sitting in these positions. And I'm really looking forward to it, because now we do have several women in leadership positions who are either partners in law firms, or who are establishing their own practice, and therefore creating more opportunity for other female lawyers to work with them, whether that's work from home, whether that's remote working opportunity. Because in COVID, we've seen a lot of innovation take place, and a lot of women connecting and collaborating with each other. So it's been great, and I'm very hopeful that we will soon have a similar, if not the same kind of culture within, women as well.
Definitely. So to add on to this conversation that we are having, in the end, I would just like to ask one more question, which I believe is so important and pertinent to the discussion at hand. And that is that if there is one piece of advice that you would want to give and share with the younger generation of female law students, what would that be? Can you hear me?
Sorry, could you please repeat that? I lost your voice.
Okay, so I was just saying that if there's one piece of advice that you would want to share with the younger generation of female law students, what would that be?
Well, I would say that they should know their rights and responsibilities, because there's a code of conduct that applies to us, and we should all be well aware of that, as well as our rights. And we should ensure that we exercise those rights. So in that, I'm including application for the license at the earliest, or ensuring that your attendance is recorded and reported in the orders and judgments of the cases that you appear in. Basically, the idea is that do not self-deny or self-censor your right to appear as a counsel, and go all the way in the process, and don't just work on the peripherals. So make sure that you're counted.
Definitely. I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. And this is so important, because there's so many like women just starting out in the legal profession, and so many law students who are interning with multiple law firms, and they actually do not know what their rights are or what the code of conduct says. So to know this at the very beginning of your career, the moment you start practicing,
Actually, the canons of professional ethics, if I'm not wrong, and yeah, canons of professional ethics, and they're available online. You can easily search for them. So with the rights, we should also know of our responsibilities and conduct ourselves responsibly online, offline, and make sure that we don't self-deny opportunities to us just because we've been discouraged at any point,
or because that's just how the culture is, and
yeah.
what can we do about it? So yeah, of course,
Yeah.
makes sense. So thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful conversation, Ms. Nida, and we're so grateful to you for your time and for actually sharing such inspirational examples and your valuable insights about the legal profession. We've learned so much from you with this discussion, and would once again like to congratulate you on this amazing achievement of the Justicia Awards 2021 at Vienna. And we hope to see you win so many more awards because you're doing wonderful for the legal profession. And we hope to be part of all the amazing projects that you are doing so that we can also contribute to the legal profession in this way. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And one thing I always say, I've accepted this award on behalf of women in law, and therefore it is as much yours as it's mine. It's the fruit of labor, of hard work of each one of you. So thank you so much to each and every member of Women in Law and its allies who've been of support in the entire journey and the process.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And it was lovely talking to you. So we hope to call you in for many more conversations about how the projects are going at the Women in Law Initiative and to just learn more about your journey.